I want to see us live our most sovereign, independent, authentic, living in our spiritual gifts life. And I just want to talk about all the things that happen in that evolution. And faux show, your girl has been in a death and rebirth cycle over the last 3 years. Hi, friends. Welcome to episode 1 of season 2 in Guide Not Guru podcast. And listen, it's accidentally been 3 years since season 1. I thought I was going to take just like a temporary little break, and it ended up being a life sabbatical for 3 years. And so my intention, I think, for this episode is just to stop procrastinating and to start speaking again. I have felt so much like paralyzation around beginning again, even though I've wanted to, because it was like, how am I going to explain who I am now? How am I going to explain all the like death and rebirth that's happened over the last 3 years? And, you know, part of me is so much the same as I used to be. And part of me is like, I'm an entirely different person. So if you are new to the podcast, welcome. This will be a little episode where you can get to know me as I am now. And if you are someone who's been with me since the beginning, one of my girls, this will be an update on who I am now. And so I'm just happy you're here. You know, I'm sure you heard in the introduction, like this is a podcast where I want to get to talk about things that help us live as conscious female leaders. Like I want to see us live our most sovereign, independent, authentic, living in our spiritual gifts life. And I just want to talk about all the things that happen in that evolution. And faux show, your girl has been in a death and rebirth cycle over the last 3 years. And I'm sure we're going to get into lots of details around it. But I think this episode, I just want to say hi, and I'm back. And here's kind of what's happened and who I am now. So if you want to hear my story, I've got an original story where I just kind of talk about how I got interested in really working with authenticity and helping really ambitious female leaders live aligned lives. So you can go like way back to the beginning of the episodes, but I'm going to bring you up until where I was in April-ish of 2023. And I'm going to tell you what led to me stopping the podcast and taking the last 3 years to freaking find out who I really am and to heal. So fast forward story is in 2020, I had spent 10 years in a network marketing company. I was very successful there. It was the majority of our family's income. I thought I was going to be there forever. And I started to have like an awakening where I realized I don't want to do this forever there. And I manifested anxiety and depression and started, life forced me to look inside myself and start asking myself bigger questions. And when I started doing that, I started talking about it online, about how I was feeling all these physical symptoms of being out of alignment. And all these women started swarming to my DMs being like, I'm feeling that too. Like, what are you reading? What are you journaling? Where are we going? What products are you using? Like, I think I'm feeling that same burnout as well. And I started to realize I had this spark of energy, feeling so excited to talk to women every single day about themselves and like helping ask questions and them finding their own answers inside where they were like, this is what I think I'd love. I'm like, oh, what if you did that? Like I started feeling a spark of life force in me again. And I realized I want to do that. I want to talk to women about what they want. I want them to help define success on their own terms. So in 2020, I walked away from my entire career. I literally asked the company I was working with to be terminated so that I could be absolutely free from them ever coming after me. And I started over. I had no money in savings. They towed my pink Cadillac away. I got a Chevy Impala from my parents for $5 and I started a new life and was like, I'm going to bet on myself. I'm going to go all in. I believe God is leading me to this next path. And he was. So in 2020, I started selling online courses. I started teaching what I was knowing and learning online. And my business grew exponentially. Like in my first year in business, I think it was a $350,000 year, my very first year in business. And I was like, oh my gosh, look what happens when you follow alignment. Well, fast forward into 2021, I started, I was growing my business, but all my financial needs were a little bit met. Not a little bit. They were met. They were met. And I started to find this inner desire that I was like, okay, I don't really have to meet my physical needs anymore. I was like, there's something that's still calling me. And I was like, God, I want to be in my purpose all the way. And I ended up having a spiritual awakening in June of 2021 that led me on this path of really seeking out the more inside of me, the more inside of the universe, the more inside of God, the more inside of faith, the more inside of Jesus, like the more inside of everything. So in that time, I went to this private island that changed my life. I had never heard God so clearly, like audibly in my ear. It was almost like, I can't believe I'm hearing the thoughts in my head that God is saying. I started to really hear God in a new and bigger way. Well, my business was growing so much and I was changing my life so much and I was seeing so many possibilities and life was just expanding. I don't know how else to say it. It was just expansive. So I invited my husband to this private island too, which is a whole nother story because he was not spiritual at all. We grew up in, Christian church together, but he didn't have a big relationship with God. He certainly was not a personal growth development person, but I invited him to this retreat and I somehow manifested him coming and he agreed to come. And when he came, he had an awakening. And when I say awakening, it's almost like he was sitting next to all these people living entirely different realities. Like we're sitting next to multimillionaires and we've lived in the same town, almost our whole lives. So he was plopped out of his reality, sitting on this island, seeing other ways that we could live. And he saw an example of a really strong Green Beret man, which is my friend Brittany Turner's husband. And he saw this masculine man being vulnerable and saving children and living out his purpose. And Josh felt something he never felt before. Makes me feel emotional. He felt a calling. He felt this desire. And I remember just knowing he needed to come to this island. I didn't know why. And I was just like, I just feel like his purpose is connected here. And that moment that was Halloween weekend of 2021, it's like our lives just kind of changed. We saw how big the world was and we felt how much God was calling us into something more. And at that time, my business was doing so well. I think that was the year that I did maybe $550,000 in my business. And we'd bought a new home and we had new cars and like everything was stable. And I just remember looking at him and being like, babe, we're okay. You can find your purpose. Like, what if you just took time to figure out who you are and to follow God? And my husband had never up until that moment had the opportunity to ever really think about himself. His dad at the age of 3 was diagnosed with cancer and he became a co-caregiver to his dad for 13 years. Like Josh had always learned to serve others and help others. And he had just never really given himself the opportunity to dream for himself. And so at that moment, I was like, babe, we're okay. I got this. You go find your purpose. And Josh, within 8 weeks probably of that trip, he came home and he quit his job and he started to step into what it would look like to go on a journey of finding himself. And I had no idea how that decision, that moment would change the trajectory of our lives. What I thought from a very naive standpoint was that we'd go onward and upwards at that point. But in that moment, we asked God, please put us in our purposes. Like, we don't want to waste time being anyone but who you've designed us to be. And what I did not know was that God, in what I believe his loving, ways, was he began to strip us of everything that was keeping us from him and from who we really are. So Josh went on to start pursuing his purpose. He started volunteering with this organization called Aerial Recovery. He started traveling to Poland. This was right when the Ukraine war was happening. And he was literally participating with this team, helping to rescue orphans at the Ukrainian border. That he felt so in his purpose, and he started doing this humanitarian work. And then he went on to pursue dome homes and start building dome homes, like different sustainable homes. A lot of things started to happen, but what I didn't know was going to happen within me was that moment that I said, go ahead, babe. I went into masculine energy. I didn't know that, but I went into this energy of focus and productivity and providing for our family. And my nervous system started experiencing a less feminine way of living. I had to provide everything, right? And that was okay for a season. Like Josh and I were like, okay, this is like what we're doing. We're going to invest in you figuring this out. And that could have been fine for like 6 months, but it ended up happening a lot longer. Happened for about like a year and a half. And so into 2022, I had been holding everything, running my business, expanding, renting private islands, which was more nervous system stress than I've ever experienced before, even when God like totally supernaturally provided people that I had a sold out retreat on the island, not once, but twice. Just lots of big things were happening in our lives. And what I didn't know was happening was that my inner body was experiencing something, even though my conscious mind was in a different reality. I was like, oh my gosh, look at us doing it. Like we're living our dreams, like we're going for it. But my body, my feminine body was experiencing a level of stress I had no idea about. So fast forward to summer of 2022, and I found myself waking up every single day, damn near depleted. Like no amount of sleep could give me rest. I woke up and I would need to take a nap at 10 a.m. and 3 p.m. I couldn't think. My gut was a mess. I started to feel these anxiety and depression feelings that I'd had years before. I was like, where is this coming from? What is wrong with me? My periods weren't regular. Like my body just was whacked out. And so I took a hormonal test, and this doctor came back to me and she was like, Kelly, I will never forget. She came up on a Zoom and was about to read me my lab results. And she looked at me and she said, you must be exhausted. And I like started to cry. And I was like, I'm so tired. I'm so tired. And I was like, but I don't know why. I love my husband. I love my life. I love my work. I love my children. I love my house. I love all these things. Like, I don't know why. I'm not unhappy. On the surface, I couldn't see what was going on. And she looked at me and she said, Kelly, there's these things called the adrenals. And she said, people have like adrenal fatigue and then they'll have like adrenal episodes. She said, Kelly, you have had a complete and utter adrenal crash. Nothing is working as it should. And I didn't tell you guys this, but we had been trying to have a baby too. And I was like, I got pregnant the minute I thought about having a baby the first 2 times. What's going on? We'd been trying for like a year. I was like, I don't know what's going on. So she looked at me and she said, nothing in your body is working correctly. Nothing is firing at the same time. She said, when you should have energy in the morning, you have already dipped below like sub levels of where you should be at the height of when you would have any kind of extra energy in the day. And she was like, you've got a big road ahead of you. You've got to rest. And I looked at her and I was like, rest? Who gets to rest? Like, I'm holding everything. I have employees to pay for. I'm providing for 4 family members. I'm paying for this house and these cars and all these things. And I've just thought like, oh my gosh, I can't do this. And so I knew I had this adrenal crash and it was exhaustion I couldn't fake through. I couldn't think of an idea to launch. I couldn't think of a post to write. I couldn't leave my team. You guys, if you've ever had an adrenal crash, it's like, what has happened to me? In addition to just the crash of like the system and like things not working and you having no energy, on top of that, I lost all belief in myself. Like where before I would be like, I can do this. I can push through. I believe in myself. I can bet on myself. All of it was gone. I had never felt so incapable in my life. And I had to, because of responsibilities and obligation, I had to keep showing up. And so instead of doing what she asked me to do, which was to rest and start to heal, I did that to a degree. I stopped like doing HIIT workouts. I stopped CrossFitting. I started just walking and resting and yogaing. I was like, okay, I can do that. And I started changing my diet, trying to help support my gut. But in my business, don't you know it, that little achiever version of me was like, okay, we're not okay. So instead of turning everything down, let's turn it up and hire more team to help me. I was like, if I can't do this, I can't stop the engine. Like I'm a Capricorn. I feel such a sense of responsibility for my life and people and things like that. And I like to succeed and I didn't want to let anybody down. And so instead of scaling back when I should have, I decided to hire out help. And at that moment in time, I was trying to pull a lever. Like I literally had my friend Justin, I'm like, help me build a model of my business that allows other coaches to coach for me, that allows me to, I need a marketing person who's going to come in and start helping me with my emails and help producing things. I just was like, I have to stop doing things because I can't. And so I hired people. Well, at the same moment, I want you to just imagine this, at the same moment that income is going down in my business because I'm unable to do what I used to do to produce it, I'm now spending more money trying to save the boat from going under because it felt like what I was supposed to do. It felt like, everybody was relying on me. I had so much pressure on my shoulders. And, I know I'm not alone in this. There were so many of us women who like boss babed it out. And I retired my husband and he's finding his purpose and I'm holding it all. And I had no idea what that was doing to my feminine body, to my internal system. You guys, on top of just being a woman, holding it all, right? And doing it all. And any person who's holding all would feel a lot. I had not built a business and I was not making choices at that moment in time that was in consideration of two things that I now know are really important about who I am. I am an ADHD woman and I'm a highly sensitive person, which means sensory nervous system stuff affects me dramatically more than it affects the normal population. And so I was taking on more pressure in my nervous system, more sensory, more all of that. It was just adding fuel to the fire and was causing me to burn out even quicker. So fast forward to spring of 2023, right when this podcast was about to end, I found out I was pregnant. And this little baby I had been knowing was a part of our family and I'd been trying for a year and a half. I will never forget taking that pregnancy test, you guys. I was in my bedroom, this giant king bed in this giant house that of course I needed to have, with my two children sleeping next to me. And my husband is across the country building dome homes. He happened to be that week. And so I'm alone and I take a pregnancy test and it was 3 a.m. and I set this pregnancy test next to my bed. I'm like closing my eyes in the dark and I open up my phone and I turn on the flashlight and I turn it to the little pregnancy stick and it says pregnant. And I'll never forget looking at the ceiling and I was like, now? You decide to come now? I've been begging for you for so long and everything is falling apart and you want to come now? And I had such a sense in my spirit that she was a part. This was her time. She was a part of the reason that I would go on to make some decisions I needed to make. And so I found myself in spring of 2023 going, I can't do it anymore. And it was at that moment that I decided to take the next couple months to let go of my team, stop the podcast, sell our house, bring Josh, my family, and I back together. So many things had just gotten stressful in our family dynamic. And it was like, I'm pregnant and I know too much now about the nervous system of the mother and how it affects the nervous system of the baby. And it was like, enough. And I remember letting my team go. I'll never forget talking to one of my friends, Anna Maria, who was working for me. And I was like, Anna, I feel like I have just been rowing a boat with all of you in it. And I am rowing as fast as I can. And at the same time, I'm rowing us all. I see that there's water leaking in through the boat. And I keep with one arm rowing and the other arm throwing cups of water out. And God is just like, stop rowing, Kelly. We need to plug up the boat. And so I made the decision to stop trying to save my business at that moment in time. And I thought, I'm going to heal. Because what threw me off was now, this was a second time that I had burnout in my life. And both times I couldn't see on the surface why it happened. And so that means whatever was happening within me was underneath the surface. And I was like, I don't want to do this a third time. I don't want to build and burn down again. I don't want to build something and run away from it again. Like I want to figure out why this is happening. And so I made the conscious choice to stop and to let everybody go and to let everything go and to let the world think whatever they wanted to think about me. And I ended up going off social media for like 10 months and I had a baby. And I went into a portal of figuring out, who am I really? Who am I? How worthy am I when no one knows who I am or what I'm doing? Do I matter when I'm not producing or creating or leading? Like, I'm an Enneagram 3, and it's like the achiever always attaches their worthiness to like what they're producing and who they're being in their image. And it was just like, I had to fall back in love with myself by myself. I had to learn to like who I am, even when no one's watching. And it was within this season, gosh, y'all, over the last few years, man, Josh and I have shifted our masculine and feminine dynamics for the first time ever. I felt what it was like to not be the provider for my family. I felt, doesn't that sound juicy? Like, oh, I'm just going to let a man provide for me. It was horrifying. I felt so out of power, so out of control, so out of purpose. Like what happened in me was just like crazy that I didn't know how to receive. I didn't know. There were so many things. And Josh had to learn in his life how to lead. And I had to learn to let him. And like, I had to learn to live on less. You guys, I've always had access to money or known how to make it. And so I could always get whatever I really wanted. And so I was not bringing in anything. And so, the things I will tell you on this podcast. So I learned a lot about masculine and feminine dynamics. I learned about finding my worthiness in myself. I chose to, even as I started to work again, I chose to homeschool my children. And this is our year 2 of homeschooling. And oh my gosh, talk about learning how to control and work with your nervous system. Spend more time with your children. That will be the most beautiful classroom that will ever teach you about your nerves. And I learned, and I've really been aligning to who I really am and what I really want. And so at this moment in time, I'm coming back as this like really healthy version of myself. Like I'm making this podcast going, it feels good to talk again. It feels good to speak again. It feels good to lead again. I want to be with other women again. I want to help them understand some of the things that I've come to learn that could maybe help prevent them from burning out or living out of alignment. I have learned so much about the system, y'all, and where we as women have lost our power. I don't doubt that I will be leading tribal circles at some point with women, and we will be doing crazy woo things because, God, we are powerful and we are creators and we are portals for big, beautiful. I feel emotional again. We are so much more powerful than we think we are, and we are so much more important than we think we are. and who we are is enough. And, you know, this season is just going to be the next iteration of Kelly leading. I promise to always be a work in progress. And so I'm excited about being together again, about getting to talk to you again and showing up as my authentic self and hoping that whatever God wants to do for you can come in and through me in a way that it gets to reach you and be a deposit. Okay. Well, I think that's the update as of now. I've got a lot more things to say, but that's kind of the catch up of where I've been. And if you're wanting to know, I'm well. I'm healthy. I'm really happy. I rest my head on the pillow every single day going, you're doing it. You're living as the woman you really want to be. And I want that for you guys too. So I can't wait to be together. I love you. Welcome back.